Hey folks, it's Marvin Cash, the host of the Articulate Fly, and we're back with another Inner Banks fishing report with Captain Richard Andrews of Tar-Pam Guide Service. How you doing, Richard?
I'm doing well, Marvin. How are you?
I'm getting there. So, you got rained out today.
We did. We're having some atypical weather for the summer, but we're rolling with it.
Yeah, well, the nice thing, right, is it's cool, so it's a good time to, maybe do a little barbecue or something like that.
It's a whole lot better than it being 98 degrees and, 98% humidity.
Yeah, there you go. And so this weather pattern, we're recording this on Tuesday. It's going to hang around for another couple of days. How long is it going to take for things in the Sound to kind of clear up once the weather moves out?
Well, the fishing's fine. It's just a matter of getting out there. It's not blowing too bad, but it's just uncomfortable. A lot of people don't want to go in the rain. It's going to be raining all day. It's supposed to clear up by the end of the week, and we'll be back at it. And hopefully we'll be looking for some of the big reds. Yeah,
there you go. And, before we jump to the big reds, just to let folks know that, the bite that we've been talking about pretty typically for sea trout and redfish is still kind of going, and it's really kind of been that way for, I don't know, the last 4 to 6 weeks, Richard?
Yeah, we're still doing that. We're still catching trout on the fly, catching some of the slot-sized redfish, anywhere from, say, 16 inches all the way up to 30 inches. So that's kind of the same pattern we've been in. But we are very excited about our giant redfish showing up to spawn, and we caught 2 last week, mixed in with some Tar-Pam we were fishing for, and they're just more and more being caught every day. So usually we think about the middle part of August as being the time when they really start showing up in really good, consistent numbers. So we're ready to do it, and we'll be focusing on them probably for the next month and a half or so.
Yeah, and so what brings them into the Sound this time of year?
Well, they come in to spawn every year. They're spawning in our area. They migrate through our inlets, and they spread out all over the Sound. And some years they seem to be more concentrated in the areas that we fish, which is the western part of the San Coast Sound and the lower ends of the rivers. Some years they're sometimes out there where we can't find them. So, we catch them every year. It's just how good of a season that we're going to have is kind of always up in the air.
Yeah, and as they always say, should have been here yesterday, right?
Well, yeah, I wish I could put that on the back of my t-shirt.
Yeah, but so in terms of, obviously, easier to tackle them on gear, how can you pursue the big drum on a fly rod?
Well, what we'll do is we basically, if we don't see the fish themselves feeding on the surface, which we often do now, we'll basically sight fish bait. So we're looking for nervous schools of bait up on top, and we'll approach them from upwind and make casts to them using big streamers, sometimes big articulated streamers, kind of like really sometimes we started using musky flies the last couple of years, which have been fairly effective, and some popping cork variations on a fly, even some big poppers. They'll attack those as well. So we'll throw into the bait schools and just try to make as much noise as we can and see if we can get their attention.
Yeah, got it. So it's a little bit like chasing false albacore in the fall, right?
Yeah, it's running gun style fishing, but we're not really running a gun, and we're kind of trying to stay quiet and not, let's say we're on a half-mile stretch of water where there's a bunch of different bait schools. There might be 20 bait schools scattered over this area, and you're not picking up and running from one school to the next. You're just kind of using your trolling motor to quietly go from one to the next and concentrating on them and hoping that it's a numbers game. The more you hit, the more chance you have for a bite. Sometimes there'll be a school that's acting a little bit more nervous than the rest, and these are adult menhaden usually, by the way. Or they might have some bluefish in them or that sort of thing, or some Spanish mackerel, and you're looking for a school that just looks a little bit different than the rest, and a lot of times that will key you in to the drummer in there.
Got it. And I guess the reason you approach upwind, right, is because you don't want the wake from the boat pushing into the fish. Is that right?
Well, that and it's just easier to cast. So we're trying to cast downwind. Yeah.
Got it.
Yep, that's right.
Well, just trying to figure it out. I'm a very trouty guy, so I learn something every time we talk.
Well, there's a big difference between trout fishing and what we do. I guided a guy the other day who was a very proficient trout fisherman. He fished in Montana. He lived in Montana for 6 years, but his distance was lacking. Very skillful caster, but just learned he couldn't double haul. He couldn't shoot line, and there's a big difference. I mean, being effective out here where we are, being able to throw like 50, 60 feet consistently versus 30 feet, which you don't ever really have to, in most trout situations, don't have to throw more than, say, 20 to 40 feet. But there might be some exceptions to that, but we can argue about that another day. But yeah, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to train a lot of people. I have a lot of clients who come and they've done nothing but trout fishing before. So there's a big difference between that, and I have to kind of get them dialed in on what they need to do to develop the skill set to be effective where we're fishing. So that's a big part of my job. I can't accomplish that on a 4-hour charter, but these are relationships that we forge on the water, and we're doing casting classes and seminars and things like that to try to develop these people into better fly fishers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess too, other than obviously strip setting instead of trout setting, when for your fishing, is it mostly the distance and the wind, or is it like bone fishing where you're having to lead fish so that you've got that kind of added into the mix as well?
Not necessarily. Most of our fishing is not sight fishing, so it's not like you have to be super accurate, but you just need to be able to. I mean, you've already got a tool that is less effective than a spinner rod, so you're already covering less water. So you can mitigate that disadvantage by trying to cast further and cover more water. Like, I mean, I've had situations where I've got anglers that were in fish, but if they could cast another 15, 20 feet, they would have caught more fish than they did.
Yeah.
So it's just a distance thing, really. It's being able to punch your fly line with a tighter loop through the wind, and also being able to shoot line, because we throw a lot of stink tips and a lot of weighted fly lines, and that really being able to shoot those lines is super important. Versus, I have people grab them and they have a 30-foot sinking line, say a 300 grain sinking line, and they're trying to false cast the 30 feet with a 20-foot section of shooting line in the air. I'm like, that's just impossible. Like, just shoot that thing. Let that lead line work for you. So these are the types of things that we're constantly battling with our clients, but it's fun. I'm not saying it's a battle. It's just education. So education's become a big part of our program.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's an eye opener. And it's hard sometimes to practice fishing with like shooting heads and things like that without actually getting out in the water.
Yeah, that's right. So we have an on-the-water classroom during our charters, but it usually goes beyond that. It goes, hey, let me meet with you, and we'll learn how to cast these lines on the draft or in the yard, off the water. And so they see what they need to do, and then we'll continue to work with them, and then they'll come back out, and they're a whole lot more effective the next time, and the next, and the next.
Yeah, absolutely. And folks, we love questions on the articulate fly. You can email them to us or shoot them to us on our Instagram or our Facebook page. And if we use your question, I'll send you some articulate fly swag. And we were in a drawing for a half-day charter with Richard at the end of the season. And before I let you hop and watch the weather, Richard, why don't you let folks know where they can find you so they can get on your guide calendar and maybe chase some of those giant drum with you?
Well, the best source of information for me is my website, www.tarpamguide.com. Feel free to email, text, or call, and I'll be happy to talk with you and answer any questions you have.
Well, there you go. Well, listen, folks, once this weather clears, you owe it to yourself to get out there and catch a few. Tight lines, everybody. Tight lines, Richard.
Tight lines, Marlon.